Come sit up here.
Okay. Hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's book talk. Before we begin, I have a couple of upcoming events that I have to talk about. This Friday, September 12th at 6:30, we're going to host a very interesting book discussion on a book called Manufacturing My Miracle. The author, Jill Viles, passed away this summer. So her husband, Jeremy Viles, her sister, Janet Albanese, and Dr. Lori Walroth, a researcher from University of Iowa, will lead the discussion about Jill's genetic detective story. It takes readers on an extraordinary journey of scientific discovery, personal determination, and bioethical debate. It promises to be a very interesting evening. Then on Sunday, September 14 at 2:30 p.m., Joyce Rupp, one of our favorite local authors, will share her newest inspirational book, and I love the title, The Years of Ripening, Reflections on Aging in Later Life. So I'm never going. Plus, there is still time to buy a ticket for a special appearance by Veronica Roth. She is best known as the creator of the Divergent series. She writes thrillers and fantasies. She'll be at Franklin Event Center on Tuesday, September 16th. And you can find all the details on our website for these and many, many other events. So, now on to tonight's author. After 2 decades of working in the entertainment industry, Shadley Grei moved back to Iowa, we're glad you did, in 2020 at the start of the pandemic to care for his mother. In the quiet nights after caretaking, he went searching for some creative escape, and he dusted off a screenplay he had written back in 2010 as a subtle love letter to his hometown of Des Moines. That script evolved into his first novel, Before Closure. He is a ghostwriter, consultant, and publisher living in West Des Moines with his husband, too many books, and never quite enough time to read. Let's hear it for Shadley Grei.
Take a minute and see if a couple people want to come and sit. You sit. Sarah, do you want to come sit?
No, I would stand.
There's chairs.
There's chairs up front here.
Plenty of chairs.
Well, I was going to get hugs back there, but I'll
Those front ones always stand.
I feel like Sarah will come up front.
Do you want me to sit like right here?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we're just gonna dive into this, I guess. This is my first novel. This is my first public conversation about my novel. I was telling a couple people earlier I had not opened my book until yesterday, since before it was published. And of course, the first thing I found was a typo, but I'm not going to tell you where it is. But it was the first open, and I found a typo. But I was reminded that helps prove that a human was involved and it was not AI.
That's right.
Defined error. Anyway. As part of the introduction, she told a little bit about how the book came to be, but I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll read a couple passages. Like Jan said, it was originally a screenplay at the height, or I had, back when the film industry was in effect here, I worked on some of the film stuff that was in and around town, and when it went away, I think it was in 2009, shortly thereafter, I drove by the house I had shared with my ex, and that had been a really, really awful breakup. And when I saw the house was for sale, it kind of shook me a little bit, like knowing that part of my life was really done, and everything that house represented was moving on to someone else. And that became the impetus for a screenplay that has eventually evolved into this novel. I don't know where the rest of the story came from. For those who haven't read it, in short, it is about a 65-year-old farmer that lives outside of Des Moines and has 2 adult children. One is a gay man, and the other is a married woman who is also a mother. And the book takes place in the 3 days leading up to the father's 40th wedding anniversary. And his wife, 7 months ago, walked out on the family without warning. And it's now the 3 days leading up to the anniversary, and he is convinced she is going to return, and no one else really trusts whether or not that is true. It's called Before Closure. It's kind of a play on words, because there is an element of the house that's part of the story is the house that the ex is moving out of is in foreclosure. And so I had I don't know where Before Closure came from, but I think I had the title before I had the story. I remember driving away from the house, and by the time I got home, I had the story. And it was originally, again, going back to it being a screenplay, it was meant to be a kind of a marketing piece, because I moved to Los Angeles in 2010, and I wanted it to be a screenplay that showcased Central Iowa in a way that is never seen on film. It's always seen as the bridges of Madison County, or flying cows and tornadoes. And so in this story, I wanted to showcase the East Village and the farmers market downtown and the Skywalk and West Des Moines and Gray's Lake. And I wanted, with the hope of the film being made, I wanted anyone to see the film to think, where is this? Like, it's so diverse, and it's all kinds of things that I wouldn't have expected. It's also very inclusive. Lots of it takes place in the East Village, and I changed the name of a lot of places, but it's very obviously the Saddle or the Garden or Ritual Cafe. It's just, I said it in those places, but I gave them different names, but anyone that's local will be like, I know exactly. So I guess I'll read it was very difficult to find some passages that I felt like could stand alone without needing a lot of explanation about where we are. So we'll see how I did. Let's see. Here is the first one. Okay. Frankie is the son who is dealing with the heartbreak that inspired a lot of the story. And at this moment, he's been at dinner at his sister's house, and it's been a fun and entertaining conversation, but he always kind of sits on the outside, and he's feeling very lost. And then he is in the kitchen and has a short conversation with his sister that is a little bit tense. And then when everyone else starts coming inside, he ducks into the bathroom to hide. And this is what happens next. Frankie ducks into a small bathroom off the kitchen, listening as leftovers are sorted, stored, and discarded. He hears the kids ask if it's time for ice cream or pie or s'mores, or if there's a way to maybe have a little bit of all of them. The sound of family can feel simultaneously like a pull and a push, and Frankie welcomes the chaos. The madness makes sense to feel so close and so far in a single moment. He leans his head against the cool door, hearing his father rummaging through the pantry in the hallway. If he could reach through the door, he would pull his father into a hug. He couldn't, he shouldn't, he won't. But the possibility lingers, as if a hug between these particular father and son wouldn't feel forced in some parallel universe. He washes his face and looks at himself in the mirror. He is briefly startled by what he sees. He has never had much of a habit of looking in the mirror. He does, of course, know what he looks like, but he rarely really looks at himself. With his short, buzzed hair and a scruffy face, it's easy for him to get ready in the morning without glancing at his reflection. But right now he's looking. He leans close enough to the mirror that his vision blurs, and then he steps back. That person, the one in the mirror, is a collection of 10,000 experiences that have taken the shape of a body looking for purpose. There are lifetimes living behind the scratches and the scars, the wonders and doubts, the what-ifs and the won't-bes. And what do they all mean? Children are given grace for being confused as they search for meaning, but adults are expected to have it figured out. When does a person become who they are? Life happens so gradually that you miss becoming. One day you're a kid kicking on a swing, trying to take flight, and the next you're hiding in your sister's bathroom, leaning against the sink and staring in the mirror with a soft fascination at how mysterious it all seems. He squints until he can almost see the boy he once was. He sees the boy he was once upon a time. That kid was a mess, but man, he was also cluelessly cool. Frankie might be struggling to make sense of things, but this he knows for certain. He doesn't miss being young, but he does miss being naive. Well, that's not the introduction, but the So obviously, Frankie is a very personal character. I had to pull a lot from my personal life in order to write his story, and so for something that took 15 years from original idea to coincidentally closure has been really, really intense. In order to make his character feel real, I had to keep digging through heartbreak and a really, really difficult relationship. It is fiction, but much of his emotional life was pulled from real life, and so that it has been interesting to let it go, to be done with it, and to hand it off to you. Has been probably the weirdest thing to process, as far as it no longer being mine for something that I have. For the last 5 years, I was really digging into it and tweaking it and second guessing and doubting, and it's been through several rounds of editing and just never quite sure if I was going to pull the trigger on publishing. I kept looking for or creating excuses, like I need to find an agent and I want it to be someone else, and then I started a publishing company in January for some other people, for some other books that I was working on, and I thought, wow, I am literally the only person stopping this from being published. I don't need anyone's permission. I have all of the tools, I can do it all, and so I think it was probably the end of July when I decided I would publish it on my birthday, which was August 7th. I think it was literally 2 weeks beforehand. I went into some of the processing you have to do to decide, like the ISBN numbers, the number that's assigned to it, and you have to put in a publishing date. And I was like, I needed the ISBN number in order to continue doing the layout, and so I was like, so I just decided on the date then, and 2 weeks later, I published it. That's a little bit more about how it came to be. Jules is the sister. My sister's name is Julie. She is not based on my sister, but of course my sister loves the fact that her name is sprinkled throughout the book with this kind of bawdy, fun, rock and roll character. And I don't know, like I was saying earlier, I don't know where a lot of the other story outside of the one that was inspired by real life, I don't know where the rest of it came from. It just felt like, again, when I was driving away, it just like, it just seemed to come completely done by the time I got home. The story has never changed, it has only expanded. I had the title almost immediately, and then when I was working on turning it into from a screenplay into a novel, I don't know how much many of you know about screenplays, but they look and they read like outlines. They're very, what you end up seeing on the screen, of course, is incredible. What you see on the page is you walked into a bookstore. You don't know the smell, you don't describe what's going on in your head. A screenplay just points out what you're seeing. And so the first time that I adapted it from the screenplay into a novel, it was very short, and it took a lot of work to figure out how to really dive in, and for a while it felt like writing more was just me trying to pad it instead of me filling it with life and filling it with memory and filling it with doubts and fears. And I didn't want it to feel like I was just explaining in great detail to get to a page count. I wanted it to feel like I was filling it with a sense of belonging and bigger than just filling in the pages. So the story of Jules is, or over the course of these 3 days, all three of our characters, Clayton is the father, Jules is the sister, Frankie is the brother, they are confronted with, each of them is confronted by someone unexpected that challenges the future they have come to expect. And they are asked to maybe rethink where they thought they were going to go next. It starts with them feeling very kind of locked in and having decided that they know what's coming next. And each of them is introduced to someone who challenges that. In Jules' case, it is her high school boyfriend who is now on the cusp of becoming a rock star, and a country star, correct myself. He comes back to town to record his second album, and he shows up at a coffee shop and where she is working, and kind of reminds her of what she used to feel like when she was young, and also tempts her to wonder if she's more like her mother than she wants to believe, as far as it's almost an invitation to run away, like she believes her mother has. I have a passage about, and then the part that I selected about her, or to read about her, is she has had a argument with her husband, and she is in the house trying to decide what she's going to do. She's trying to decide if she wants to go see this guy, or if, sorry, should have barked these better. No wait, I'm gonna change my mind with where we're going, because I was just talking about the boyfriend. This is a scene closer to the end where she has actually gone with the guy, his name is Joshua, to his hotel room after a big argument with her family, and she's sitting on the bed in his hotel room trying to decide who she is and what she's going to do next, and is she willing to risk everything for some kind of maybe. And this is what it says. Given where her mind has gone and her body now sits, it's startling to hear herself suddenly say, "I'm not unhappy in my life." The statement seems to wander around the room, resetting all of the upturned questions and doubts that have been kicking around between them ever since he walked into Fuel Injector. That's the coffee shop that which is the Ritual Cafe, Fuel Injector. Jules looks around as if watching the remark take shape as a fact rather than a hope. "Are you sure?" Joshua asks, justifiably doubting her given the circumstances. She nods, surprised to find she is sure, very sure. "It's not the life I imagine," she tells him, "but it's the life that I have." He uncrossed his arms as he considers this, wrinkling his nose in protest. "That sounds like settling." Jules rolls her eyes a little. What does that even mean? Jules has always been bothered by the concept of settling. It sounds like judgment against someone who has the audacity to find peace in a life different from the one they daydreamed of as a kid. But she's glad Joshua brought it up, because it's helped clarify questions she didn't even know she was asking. There's a fine line between settling and acceptance. Just because my life is different from what I expected doesn't mean it's wrong. She knows she's sounding more brittle, more brutal than she had intended. Besides, happiness is overrated. Real life is work, it's not recess. He laughs. "Be careful, whatever you say may be used against you in a country song." And the last passage I'll read is about the father who, as many of you may know, me writing a positive father figure is probably a stretch. It's probably the most fictionalized part of the story, the part that was the hardest for me to write, because for those of you who don't know, I did not know my father growing up, and I did not have great father figures. And so I think I wrote, he's certainly not flawless, but I just wanted to write a dad to believe in. Well, excuse me. So he, obviously, is dealing with the heartbreak of his wife walking out. She has done this before. When you read the book, she likes to take excursions. She likes to surprise the family and say, I'm in Seattle, or I'm in Paris, or she'll just do these kinds of things. She's never been gone quite this long. He crosses paths with this woman named Mona, and Mona owns essentially she owns the saddle. Her son was gay. He had committed suicide, and she took it over when he passed. And they have been friends for many, many years. Both of their kids had gone to school together, and he runs into her at Menards, as you do, where she is buying a grill to replace the one in the bar that got stolen. And she obviously represents the potential for Clayton to move on and experience something different in a different kind of relationship. At this point in the book, there has been a big fight at the restaurant where it's all kind of come to a head, and he has followed Mona back to her house and is reluctantly comes in for a cocktail afterwards, and they go down to the basement, a quintessential Midwestern basement that has the walkout basement. It's got a bar, it's got a pool table, and they have been talking, and he's decided that it's time to go. I should go, he suddenly says when he realizes his glass is empty of even the memory of ice. Okay, she says, but neither of them moves other than to roll their pool balls. They roll again, and the room echoes with a crack as the white meets black in the middle of the table. They are both still for a moment. There's much involved in leaving, stairs to climb, the back door, the walk to the truck, and the 40-minute drive home. It's more than Clayton is ready for. Can we sit for a minute, he asks. Of course we can, Mona replies as she flips a switch that brings a gas fireplace to life. She retrieves 2 blankets from a footstool trunk and hands one to him. He looks at the quilt in Mona's outstretched hand. It feels wrong to be here, but right now he wouldn't want to be anywhere else. He takes it from her and follows her to 2 chairs flanking the fireplace. I don't know why I turned it on, she says, nodding towards the fire. It's the middle of summer. I like the light, Clayton says. He settles into a chair while she sinks into the one across from him. She studies him for a moment and then says, I would like to say something that you might not want to hear. He doesn't say anything, hoping she won't continue. He wants to stay in the silence, but he knows he can't. He waits a moment longer, holding on to the quiet, fearing that whatever she says will make him like her less, and she's not ready for that. Finally, he glances up at her and nods. She pauses, choosing her words carefully. I wish for you to be waiting for someone who chooses you. Carol's coming home, he reiterates for the 100th time. I'm not suggesting she isn't, Mona says. I simply want you to feel like a priority and not an option. Yeah. So I think at this point I'll open it up to questions. If anyone has questions about the book, can I get a show of hands of who's actually read it?
I'm halfway through it. I'm really glad you didn't read like the end. Same.
Yeah, so I guess for those who have read it, if you do have questions, let's not reveal the end. But I am curious I guess any questions? I know, Brooke, you had a question.
I want to know, and maybe it's because I didn't read it, but that had to be a hard decision to pick the cover. How did you come up with that to pick the cover? That had to be huge. That's what I'm asking.
Interesting. It's actually. Do you want me to tell you the true story of the cover?
I don't know how to not know you without the truth. You can tell me later.
No, it is very symbolic. I don't know that I've told anybody other than the person that did my layout. If you look at the cover, it's 4 fireflies are in a jar, or there are 3 fireflies are in a jar and one is outside. The mother is outside and the 3 are trapped inside. And if they want to, they can leave because the lid is off the jar. And so it's very symbolic. It's also one of the themes of the book is Christmas in July. So that's why there are Christmas lights around the pole, and it's in the country. And so, but yeah, I can't tell you the amount of work. No, but I mean, I can't. The amount of time I spent. The horrible covers I could show you that were like, oh God, it's never gonna work. Never mind.
There's such a commitment.
Yeah. So that is the story of the cover.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Thank you. Did you have a question?
I do have a question. So, if I may bring up a section that you wrote
Okay.
after I looked through
wow.
your photos of you.
Highlighting. She came prepared.
Well,
She's gonna.
one of the things I've appreciated so far, and I know this to be true about you, is the way that you write about the complexity of the human experience.
Right.
And there's one particular section that just I feel like could illustrate it for folks, if you wouldn't mind reading it, and then speak to why is that important to you. And when I say the complexity, I mean really having a more nuanced approach to things like sadness and depression.
Okay.
And so this was the section that sorry, do you want me to blow it up?
No, let me look at
They don't
I have to think where
Yeah, right.
I have to figure out. I have to understand where this is in the context.
I don't remember. I just remember highlighting it because it was so poetically beautiful. Maybe it doesn't need context. It's in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like chapter 3.
I was just curious where this. So I'll read it, and maybe that'll make sense. Okay. Frankie knows he could rearrange the pieces of his life into something more respectable, but he needs the mess right now. He needs the rage and sadness because they're justifiable, given his recent life circumstances. It's harder to explain the same feelings in a better existence. Clinical depression isn't easy in a world that reminds you that it, quote, it could always be worse. He doesn't understand why people treat depression like a competition. It's not a matter of sadness looking for justification. It doesn't always feel like misery, though that defines certain moments. It's not a sense of doom, pessimism, or hatred, self-pointed or otherwise, only of life painted in monochromatic shades of melancholy.
So what's important about that for you? Or where does that come from for you? Because there's a complexity in your language, particularly when
Write to process, and I write to explore my own thinking and to make sense of my own struggles and challenges. And I suppose in that moment I saw an opportunity to share but there is this kind of cloudiness. There is there's this thing, okay, well, at any moment I could cry. That's just the reality. So I wanted to share that because one thing I have repeatedly said is that as an artist, I feel like I am here to make people feel less alone. And obviously there's nothing lonelier than depression and feeling like no one understands. And so if anyone came across that passage, they might feel less invisible, and that is what I love to explore. It does invite me to write sometimes in a way that I feel like might overdo it, or might be a little too grandiose, or might be a little too like, hey, we gotta like let it go already. Can we get on to the funny part? And so I think it's important for me to share the complexity, and that life is not linear and it is not simple. That's
beautiful.
Thank you. Shelley.
Whew. You made it.
Can you share with the group the quote that you got texted multiple times, quoted back to you? It's on page 23.
Yeah, and I'm so
My favorite.
fascinated. This is actually the first chapter. We're meeting Clayton, the father, and he gets up in the morning and he's walking through the house, and his sister is out in the garden, and he's kind of like, I'm not really in the mood to go out yet, and so he's walking through the house, and he's pausing on the back stoop before crossing the yard to talk to his sister. And there is, so he leans down, and this is what it says. He finds a cigarette butt tucked under the burgundy star petunias, and he wonders if Frankie had started smoking again. It wouldn't be surprising. They should all be smoking, or at the very least, setting things on fire. For whatever reason,
Highlighted.
for whatever reason, I had 5 editors touch this book, and I don't know if you did. Terry was the last editor. She's here.
She's page 42 with the S word.
But all the other editors and a lot of people that read it in the beginning, like they highlighted that line. Like in the entire book, they would be like, this line, like I don't know what I tapped into with that line, but I think it's understandable when you're feeling just unsure. You want to, if not set things on fire, you want to smash something. You want to disrupt in a way that feels damaging but controllable. And so I don't know specifically, but I've had people more than once like highlight that and laugh or exclamation or underline or take a picture of it and send it to me. Like I find that fascinating, because to me it was a throwaway line, but I love that it connects in that way. So thank you, Shirley. Anybody else got a question? Oh God, what now? No. What do you got?
What was healing for you in the process of writing and then releasing? Because I know you spoke to how vulnerable it was, and that's like a big ask. But how did the parallel of the journey of the characters, right? Like, just what was this process like, knowing that it came from such a vulnerable personal place?
Well, like I said, it asked me repeatedly to process the most damaging relationship I have been in, and when I got to be done with that was incredibly healing. Yeah. I didn't realize how much I'd done with the processing of that. On behalf of this character, like I had already moved on. Like I had no, well, obviously I had unresolved feelings in order to be able to write about them, but I didn't feel trapped in that. I had no need for that anymore, but it was surprising how intense someone who's in their 60s and what life might look and feel like, and that took some creative thinking and some guesswork, and also imagining the perspective of a 65-year-old man who loved his children and stuck around and fought for them. And I really liked, similar to the passage you asked me to read in the processing, in the story, you witness the father's it's in a flashback, but you watch him learn how to love a gay kid when he grew up in the country. And it's not that he didn't love his kid, he was just so kind of confused by it. And you get to watch a man who is very kind of stoic and, you know, a Midwest farmer process what that means and find peace in that. That was also kind of healing in order to see that that was possible and to remind myself that we're all a little bit capable of still learning something and trying to like wrap your head around or unpack your fears about someone you don't totally understand. Like, what if I just did? What if I just let go of my need for them to match what I want them to be and just accepted who they were? So yeah, I think that was the biggest challenge, was giving him a full life so that he on the page felt real.
Yeah.
He was the most challenging because he was not. I didn't have that to look up to. Like I couldn't write it in honor of. I do think what's interesting about the book's process is that it is about a mother walking. And I think in the very beginning I made a very conscious. I think actually in the original idea it was the father that left, and I wanted to write something different than the obvious, and to allow this mother to decide, this is going to sound crass, but I am more important than the life I have now. Like I'm going to explore, I am not. There's a line that she says throughout the book. There is one line that each of them hears from her, and she says, I have to go in search of my life while it's still mine to find. And they don't know that she has said that to all three of them, but in different chapters you see, and so that was her mantra. And that I was processing a woman capable of doing that while caretaking my mother was odd, was like an odd, and my mother doesn't know about the book. My mother passed away. I moved back in 2020 to care for her. I wrote this while living in a hotel after a fire. We had a house fire on Christmas Day.
Which one?
The first one, and was in a hotel in West Des Moines, and that's when I started writing this. And so I am caretaking my mother while writing about a woman who has abandoned her family. That was an odd, and that my mom, who loved books, doesn't know this book exists, that I know of. So that's what I'm unpacking now, actually, is wow, that is one hell of a story to share based on the circumstances. So I'm processing that a little bit now, like now that it's no longer the obvious, which was the heartbreak.
Yes.
Now that it's like, Jesus, like what did I write? I'm like, what? So yeah, it's been interesting to process. It's an ongoing process to process. Any other questions?
Is there another book?
Yes, I have. This one took me 15 years to write. I have a goal of having my next one published before next September.
Ooh.
I read a book that the minute I think I was through the first chapter and was like, oh my God, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this. And so I had started another novel which was completely separate from anything connected to me. It was like a thriller, which is a genre I love, and so I wanted to see if I could write in it because it was so different than this. But then when I read this book that inspired this new idea, it just like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about it. So that is coming together.
Okay. So you'll be back in a year. You're all invited.
All right. Thank you very much for coming out.
And Brian Hoke, you're on Facebook.
They're watching from back there.
Postmodern. No, I commented